He conned thousands of people out of their savings, walked away with 22 months in a prison with no fences, and then Hollywood handed him a blockbuster. This is the story of Jordan Belfort, the man who scammed America and somehow got richer telling everyone about it. And the strangest part? People still root for him. Bayside, Queens, 1962. A working-class Jewish neighborhood where nobody expected much and ambition wasn't really part of the deal. Jordan Belfort didn't get that memo. At 14, he was already running an ice cream cart on the beach, upselling strangers with a grin that could talk anyone into a second scoop. By the end of that first summer, he'd pulled in around $20,000, not bad for a kid who couldn't legally drive yet. Most teenagers with that kind of money buy a car. Jordan enrolled in dental school. On day one, the dean told the incoming class point blank, "If you're here to get rich, you picked the wrong profession." Jordan didn't need to hear the rest of the speech. He got up and walked out. Fixing cavities was never the plan. Getting rich was, and dentistry wasn't going to get him there fast enough. So he pivoted to meat, literally. Jordan and a partner started a door-to-door business, hawking frozen beef and seafood out of a truck, no experience, no real supply chain, just relentless hustle. At its peak, the operation was pulling in 6 figures a month. It was chaotic, spoiled inventory, late deliveries, invoices nobody paid, and it collapsed into bankruptcy within a couple of years. But the meat business taught him something that mattered more than the money he lost. The product was never the point. He could sell anything to anyone. All he needed was the right stage. Wall Street was about to give him one. Jordan landed an entry-level job at L.F. Rothschild, a real Wall Street firm, suits, quotas, and, this being the 1980s, more cocaine in the office than most people would believe. It was here he learned the language of the market, how brokers talked, how they pitched, how fear and greed moved money faster than any spreadsheet ever could. Then came October 1987, Black Monday. The market cratered, and Jordan was let go along with a lot of other junior brokers. While everyone else saw disaster, Jordan saw an opening. Penny stocks. Cheap, unregulated shares nobody serious would touch, but with commissions up to 10 times higher than blue-chip trades. No prestige required, just a phone and the ability to keep someone on the line. He'd call a stranger in the Midwest, with a pitch built entirely on urgency. A tiny company, some vague breakthrough technology, a ground floor opportunity nobody else had spotted yet. Get in now at $1 a share, and in 6 months you'd be thanking him from a beach house. He didn't need the mark to understand the company. He needed them to feel like they'd miss out if they hesitated. It worked, again and again. By 1989, Jordan wasn't working alone anymore. He'd teamed up with Danny Porish, a fast-talking, high-energy operator from Long Island, who had none of Wall Street's polish, but all of its hunger. Jordan had the vision. Danny brought the chaos. Together, they founded Stratton Oakmont. The name sounded like old money and mahogany boardrooms. In reality, it was a strip mall office stacked with folding tables, ringing phones, and virtually zero regulatory oversight. Jordan didn't hire experienced brokers. He hired bartenders, college dropouts, kids with nothing to lose and everything to prove. He trained them in what he called straight-line persuasion, a scripted, high-pressure sales method built to steamroll hesitation and walk a stranger from hello to where do I send the check, without a single pause for doubt. And it wasn't random who they targeted. Stratton went after everyday people, retirees, working parents, folks Wall Street usually ignored, and sold them certainty dressed up as opportunity. At first, it was obscure penny stocks, but as the money grew, so did the scheme. Stratton began controlling blocks of shares in real IPOs, then using its army of brokers to manufacture demand, call after call, hype after hype. driving the price up before quietly selling off their own shares at the peak and leaving everyone else holding the loss. It's a scheme with a name: pump and dump. Inside Stratton, it was just Tuesday. By the early 90s, the firm had become something between a brokerage and a circus. Screaming trading floors, extravagant bonuses for top earners, public humiliation for anyone who fell behind, and parties that became industry legend. Jordan bought a yacht, a helicopter, mansions, watches. He barely wore twice. He preached one gospel to his brokers: winning is everything, and if you're not winning, you're nothing. On paper, Stratton Oakmont was a Wall Street success story. Underneath it was a house of cards. Because when you can't sell people the truth, you sell them a dream instead. By 1994, the excess was catching up with the empire. The SEC had started flagging suspicious filings. Investors who'd bought in high were watching their shares crater, and complaints were piling up. Inside the firm, some brokers had started asking uncomfortable questions about stocks with no real product behind them. Management's answer was simple: close the sale or find another job. Meanwhile, the money had to go somewhere it couldn't be traced. Millions moved offshore through shell companies and accounts under relatives' names in places like Switzerland and the UK. What Jordan called asset protection, federal investigators would later call something else entirely: laundering. His personal life was unraveling just as fast as the firm's finances were being hidden. Drug use that had once felt like a reward for success had become a daily requirement to function. His marriage was falling apart. In one widely reported incident, he crashed a car while under the influence with his young daughter in the passenger seat. Then, in the summer of 1996, came the yacht. Against his captain's warnings, Jordan insisted on sailing from Italy to Sardinia through a storm. The yacht began taking on water in the middle of the Mediterranean, and the Italian Navy had to rescue everyone on board. The boat was a total loss. It was the kind of moment that should have been a wake-up call. It wasn't, not yet. Back in New York, journalists were starting to circle, former employees were starting to talk, and federal investigators were quietly building a case, following wire transfers, tracking cash purchases, and piecing together a financial timeline that didn't add up to a legitimate business. Some of Jordan's own brokers had already begun cooperating, some out of principle, most simply trying to save themselves. In October 1996, federal agents raided Stratton Oakmont's offices. They had what they needed. Jordan didn't stop, though, not immediately. In early 1997, while under active investigation, he wired $2 million overseas. That single transfer, fully traced and recorded, became the piece of evidence that sealed everything. By 1998, Jordan Belfort was out of moves, facing decades in federal prison on charges including securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. He made the same calculation he'd made his whole career: sell. This time, what he sold was information. He cooperated with prosecutors and wore a wire, and over 30 former colleagues, many of them brokers he'd personally trained, were eventually indicted. Some served longer sentences than he did. Jordan himself was sentenced to 4 years, but served just 22 months at a minimum security facility with no fences and unarmed guards. He played tennis, worked out, and started writing. It was there he met comedian Tommy Chong, who was serving his own sentence on an unrelated case. Jordan told him the whole story: the fraud, the drugs, the sinking yacht. And Chong's advice was simple: write it down. In 2007, Jordan published a memoir. It read less like a confession and more like a highlight reel. Few regrets, a lot of bravado, and a story audiences couldn't get enough of. He sold the film rights, and in 2013, Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio turned his life into one of the decade's biggest movies. The man who'd defrauded thousands of ordinary investors was now being applauded in theaters worldwide. The victims didn't get a sequel. A teacher who lost her retirement, a veteran who put in his life savings, families who leveraged their homes chasing a tip that turned out to be worthless. Courts ordered Belfort to pay $110 million in restitution. Decades later, only a fraction of that has actually been paid, much of it reportedly still tied up in complex financial arrangements that make recovery difficult. Today, Jordan Belfort works as a motivational speaker and sales coach, touring stages and podcasts under the nickname his own crimes gave him, wearing the wolf like a badge instead of the warning label it should be. He's been quoted saying that greed made him guilty, but that everyone else is guilty of the same thing. Maybe that's the real reason his story worked so well as entertainment. Deep down, a lot of people didn't want to see him punished. They wanted to imagine being him,